Hello everyone, Steve here from Tech Toy Tinker and Retro Arena. I wanted to take a few minutes today to do an update from my video from 8 or 9 months ago on my PSP build. There's been a lot of changes and developments. There's been several new games and some things that I've added to my personal build, and I just wanted to share them with you guys. The first thing is that I've updated Retroarch to the latest version. Now, there's Retroarch and there's Retroarch Piglet. I want to explain the difference because it's not always very clear. Retroarch Piglet is using a wrapper or a plugin, I guess you could call it, of sorts. And that plugin is for GLES. Now, on certain cores and emulation in general, it does allow better hardware acceleration and it does allow shaders to work. However, it's not ready for prime time yet, and it's definitely not ready for a daily driver. So I don't recommend that you use that particular version yet for anything more than testing. That being said, as you can see, we are at 1911 Retroarch. I'll give you a look at the cores that are in here. Many of them do work perfectly fine as well, not Jaguar. Jaguar barely works anywhere. As you can see though, there's a lot of them. DOSBox Pure is great. It's got a virtual keyboard. As you can see, there's a lot. 3DO doesn't work that great on PSP either, just to keep expectations realistic. This has been released in the last few months, and much like with the Grand Theft Auto games, I don't advise you to use this port unless you actually have Bully. Simply because there's so much controversy surrounding Rockstar and the re-releasing of games and Take-Two and the lawsuits that it's honestly not in your best interest as an end user to bother using something from Rockstar unless you legitimately have it and it's yours. You might find that you get a larger headache in the end than you bargained for if you, say, download a copy of Bully. But if you already own Bully, and you're just taking your own files and moving them from one place to another, that should be fine. It does take a minute to load, but once it loads, it works fine. The same is true with Grand Theft Auto and the other games. I'm missing a piece of my Vita, as you can see. I have no idea what happened to it over the years. It just sort of disappeared.
Mom, why'd you marry that phony? You really want me to?
I'm gonna tell someone right now!
So, as you can see, works fine. Bully is actually a game that I always really did enjoy. I grew up playing Grand Theft Auto, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and I thought Bully was in the spirit of Grand Theft Auto while also different enough to make it its own game. But as a company, in terms of their gameplay, I've always really liked Rockstar. There's Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto are games that I grew up playing. Red Dead Revolver was on PS2. It was a game that I owned I still own it actually on PS2. I own the Grand Theft Auto trilogy on PC and on PS2. Like the original discs. And I've also got San Andreas here on my tablet. Not that I ever play it because it's a pain in the butt on a tablet, but it was useful for this. My thing is that, as a general rule, I don't really like or condone piracy, but at the same time, if you own a game, like say I own I own a lot of games for Vita and PSP, whether it's UMD games or whether it's physically like the cartridges for the Vita. I own a fair number of them, and I think there's a difference between piracy, which would be downloading a game or getting a game that you don't own and using it and playing it, having it. That's piracy. However, I don't agree that having a backup of a game you own and you have purchased and playing it on other, like on your PC and on other platforms is piracy. I think if you own a game, you own a game. As you can see here with Final Fantasy, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. However, 3, 4, 5 have got Android ports, which do feature improved graphics. However, I would recommend that you use the PSP version of the game, specifically because for Final Fantasy IV, it's got a lot of additional features and pretty much a whole extra a whole extra game included in. So you just get more from playing the PSP game. There's a second folder here. Final Fantasy X and X2 you can purchase digitally from the PlayStation Store, or if you've already got them on Vita, you can just use your cartridge. The problem is if you bought them on, say, a PS3 or 4, then you can't really... PS1 is the same deal. I don't think there's any harm to taking a PS1 game that you own, putting it in your PC and dumping it to an e-boot file, and then putting those on your Vita. I don't think it matters if you play your PS1 games on your PS1, your PS2, 3, 4, Vita, whatever. It's just my opinion, but it is what it is. Easy RPG works. I point that out because there's some really good games here that I really enjoy. Like this one. This is exactly what it looks like. It's a rather faithful 2D recreation of Final Fantasy VII. Adrenaline says 661 still, but it's actually version 7.0 now. I've updated that as well. It doesn't do tons of things, but there's some simple fixes and touch-ups. Now, I come in here for a reason. You see, I've got all these games that are PSP games. Now, one of my favorite things here is called Adrenaline Bubbles Manager. if you don't know what this is, what it basically does is every time that you put a PSP or a PS1 game onto your device, you can come in here and it'll pull a list or make a list of them. And then you turn around and you do this. And that'll put a bubble on your Vita that will direct launch your PS1 or PSP game from the Vita home screen. So this way you don't have to launch Adrenaline every time, and you can keep your games in order. So if you want to keep them Final Fantasy with Final Fantasy like I do, you now have that option. So I can close this. There are a ton of features I like to the Vita, especially when it's modded. As you can see, this has an English language fix to it. That's going to about do it for this video. Just wanted to show you guys some of the stuff that I've been using and working on with the Vita and why it remains one of my favorite systems. You can literally play Final Fantasy 1 to 10 right here on the Vita natively. And then on top of that, you can just use Moonlight to play all the PS2 games and PS3. So it's a massive anthology for me. PS1, PSP, PS Vita, all those games are right here. And plus, much like any of the other handhelds, it does all the 8, 16, and most of the 32-bit stuff reasonably well also. I mean, N64 is hit and miss, and Dreamcast is probably never going to happen. But if you don't mind, Sega CD and Super Nintendo and those earlier systems, and that's all you're really after, plus the Vita and PS1, PSP, that's all you really need. We don't have Nintendo DS or Flycast or great N64, but everything under that works great. And so that combined with the amazing build quality of this, the OLED or OLED screen, and the fact that this is one of the original launch models from 10 years ago now, and the battery still works great. I haven't charged it in all day. I haven't used it that much, but it holds a charge for a long time still, and it works well. So, as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Take care.